Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining Gwinnett County Public Library and UGA Gwinnett Extension for our Perennial Flowers for Your Garden workshop. My name is Mary Mayer and I work for Gwinnett County Public Library's Adult Programming Department. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some housekeeping rules for our meeting. Please make sure that you keep your microphones muted. We will be doing a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box that is located at the bottom of your screen. Now I would like to introduce our presenter. Tim Daly is the Horticulture and Environmental Agent at UGA Extension Gwinnett. He manages agricultural and natural resources programs in Gwinnett County by teaching educational programs in forestry, horticulture, landscape management, and water conservation. Tim manages over 150 Master Gardener volunteers in Gwinnett County and writes a weekly article for the Gwinnett Daily Post and a monthly column in the Gwinnett Citizen. Tim Daly is an Atlanta native and has a bachelor's in horticulture and a master's in entomology from the University of Georgia. Please welcome Tim Daly.
Well, this is an honor to be here this evening. Talking about my background, I'm one of those rare Atlanta natives. Actually, I grew up in Decatur, DeKalb, so not really native to Gwinnett, but close enough. Tonight, we're going to talk about perennials for Georgia gardens. Perennials are some of my favorite flowers, and I love to grow them, and I'm building up a collection of them. We'll go over the perennials and just a few things about growing them, and then we'll go into some different types of perennials. This presentation was originally developed by Bodie Panizzi and Paul Thomas. They were horticulture professor at the University of Georgia, and theirs had like 140 slides, so I had just pared it down to a smaller number, but still cover the high points. Actually, Paul Thomas retired from the horticulture department last year, and he tragically died not long after that, so it was a huge loss to our community. Bodie's down at the Griffin Research Station. So, perennials. What is a perennial? A plant which completes its life cycle in 2 or more years and withstands both summer and winter conditions. Well, trees, shrubs, they're all perennials. Our grasses, lawn grasses are perennials as well. But I'm focusing more on with these herbaceous plants that we can grow that are really nice, the herbaceous perennials. Tender perennials are annuals which happen that you can be over winter. It's very weather dependent. Sometimes are annuals 7 out of 10 years. It's like they're annuals, but if they're in a warmer climate, they can be perennials. Lantana is an example of that. It's a tender perennial, but up here it's usually an annual, although that Miss Huff variety is said to come back year after year. You go down to Florida, it's a perennial. Annual is a plant which completes its life cycle in less than 1 year, unable to withstand both summer's heat and winter's cold. Our vegetable plants, most of them are annuals. You got your summer annual flowers like the impatiens, marigolds, begonias, coleus, and numerous other ones that grow during the summer. And then you got your winter annuals like pansies and snapdragons and some of the ornamental collards and ornamental cabbage, kale, Swiss chard, and so forth. A biennial plant is a plant that completes its life cycle in 2 years. It has the first year is vegetative growth, the second year it flowers and produces seeds. One common annual that you'll see in the early summer is the Queen Anne's lace. Wild carrot is sometimes referred to. That's a biennial. In the garden, I can think of one is the digitalis or foxglove, which is also a biennial. So this is just basically the classification. Pre-planting installation is critical. Know what the plant needs. Make sure it's placed in the right place. It can grow in our climate. That's true with any plant. Some plants prefer, some of these plants can tolerate wet soils and others can't. Some of them are more tolerant, don't tolerate dry soils, although many of them do. Some need shade, others need sun, or some can handle both. So you have to know those requirements. Make sure you get the right plant for the right place. Make sure when you go purchase perennials, that you're purchasing healthy plants. You don't want to go and see plants that are dry and wilting. Also, those that have insects, diseases, or there weeds growing out of there. And so you want to get healthy plants. Bed preparation is essential. Yeah, just like you can rototiller with soil, or you can just you really need to add organic soil to this clay soil, organic amendments, topsoil, compost, peat moss. Either till it in or just kind of shovel it in, rake it in. You can do it that way as well. That's what I do a lot and have good results. One thing is that as the flowers, this applies to a lot of things, biennials as well, and some flowering shrubs like roses. Deadheading is to remove the old flower blooms before they go to seed, so they'll put more energy into producing new flowers. Um, so deadheading is it is essential. Although I often laugh at that name, Deadhead, makes you think of the people who used to chase that band around a long time ago. You have to periodically divide, and that means digging up the perennials and dividing them out. There's several methods of division that has helped propagate plants and helps improve their growth because if they get too compacted in an area, they don't grow as well. Fibrous root perennials such as Phlox, salvia, Joe Pyeweed, the only reliable method is to identify groups of growing points, divide the clump with a shovel, lift large sections of the root mass with the shovel, and large clumps can be pulled apart to obtain individual sections with growing points as seen here. And these can be planted, and you can divide them up, plant them in other areas of the yard, or give them away. Dividing hostas is an example because they will grow. There's rhizomatous perennials. Irises can be in that. Canna, daylilies, and a few other things. They must be lifted, washed, and then hand cut. Each section must have a new eye or a growth area, like what you're seeing in this picture right here. There's also spreading perennials, can be divided as large clumps. Each clump is planted as a unit. Thrift dianthus is an example. The sections are pulled apart into individual stem pieces, and you might want to use a rooting hormone to kind of stimulate root growth on that to help get them to grow. Multiplying spreading annuals, you can see how they're doing, cuttings planted, spaced out, divisions, so forth. So basically, what you'll do is the end result, you'll have as additional plants to provide an endless supply of new material to keep your perennial garden fresh and healthy. A lot of these plants don't live. I mean, they call them perennials, but some of them don't live. You don't all live forever. Some live long, have longer lifespans than others. I mean, peonies can go over 100 years. Some of the others eventually will will eventually won't last that long. And so anyhow, perennials, we're now basically, I'm just some of the best. And of course, when you're dividing, right now is a good time to divide because they're going into dormancy. And, the late fall, winter months to divide them. And In the spring, you get new ones come up. They'll come up. Fertilize them when they come up in the spring. Put some 10-10-10 fertilizer, sprinkle around there. That gives them a little boost. You might want to do it again, a little side dressing once during June or July, just to kind of get them going, keep them looking nice. So perennials, but I said that some have lifespans longer than others, but they all live for much longer. They live for several years, and so they can really they're really that's what this is really one of my favorite type of flowers. It's just trying to, and I got a numerous in my garden. So we're going to discuss several of them. One is the Russian sage. Its Latin name is Perovskia altriplicophilolia. That's where they get the name Russian. Is a good plant for dry, sunny places, well established before sunny heat. Fall planting's good. Single plants do not look showy due to the diffuse nature of the flower. So you need to get kind of several plants put together. A lot of them, the professionals will use 10 to 12 plants on 10-inch centers for a strong color effect. Um, they, um, they bloom during the summer months. They need full sun and also nectar sources for bees and other pollinators. I've seen this growing. It's a very it's a tough plant once it gets started and gets established. It can handle dry conditions. Summer phlox are several different type colors. Phlox paniculata. I always think of my late grandmother. She always had these reddish pink phloxes growing all in her backyard around her patio, and I got a few of them. They can be troubled by deer. So what I'm gonna talk I'm gonna digress for a minute on deer. One way to keep them out is to put an 8 to 10 foot fence up, but a lot of us aren't able to do that. So another thing is to use what we call taste repellents, TASTE. Repellent is it has sort of like a rotten egg material in it, and it stinks real bad, but not after it dries. And there's like the liquid fence sells one, and you can spray it on your garden plants, and it works pretty good. The only thing is that you need to occasionally reapply it, because it will break down and wash off with rain events. So yeah, that's a nice one. Sometimes they get powdery mildew, can be problematic on some of them. Peonies, these are they're difficult to grow in much of Georgia. I've noticed I've not really had that much luck, but they must be planted shallow and underlain with good organic soils that drain well. Will not perform well or shade or areas that are bone dry all summer. So they're kind of they're a little bit picky, but they will grow. I knew my grandmother had a lot of them. Very fragrant. But they do need a lot of organic matter. Shasta daisies are very easy to grow in our area. Uh, they're beautiful perennials. Don't fertilize or don't put any fertilize it in March, but none afterwards because it makes them because they get real leggy. Deadheading improves the plant's ability to produce flower. It says no drought, but I've seen them do all right in drought. They can handle deer. They don't need excessive amounts of fertilizer. It's too much fertilizer will make them leggy. They need full sun, although I've seen them grow in part shade. Here's a nice one, the daylilies. This is a good plant to have. There are thousands of hybrids from which to grow, and they grow well in full sun. Um, they really, once you plant them, they really don't need that much help once they get established. It says full sun. It says declines in heat, but I've never seen them decline. The ones I have thrive. There's that Stella Doro Daylily, the little smaller growing ones. They're great. They molt. You can divide them out. All these daylilies you can. There's a society, Hemeroclus or Daylily Society, that does that just all the thousands of different varieties. They have a show every summer. So I always think of daylilies, but when they bloom prolifically in June, and that's my birthday. So every time I see the daylilies blooming, I know I'll be another year old. Mexican petunia, Ruelia, um, late blooming perennial. It's a long-lived tall and can spread like a slow freight train. Purple pink flowers later in the season. Relatively pest-free and suffers from few diseases. So that's what you want, something like that, especially that is drought tolerant, full sun, doesn't need a lot of fertilizer. It can tolerate deer, spread slowly. And that's coming in bloom now, so get some of those. Swamp sunflower. There's another one that I've had this growing. It grows great, but it gets real tall and it tends to be very aggressive, types to take over. So you got to, the flower stalks can grow up to 8 feet tall. Um, it survives the heat. It's very heat tolerant, deer tolerant, and it will put on a spectacular show in the fall, late summer and fall. Um, yeah, you can grow these, but just be aware they do get pretty tall, so you need to kind of move them to an area where they can grow and not be problematic. Blue sage, which is a type of salvia, species of salvia, is a gem in the garden. It's tough and durable, blooms from May until November, attracts hummingbirds and butterflies. It grows, it's just it's full sun prefers. Uh, Usually needs some midsummer trimming after the first flush of growth of flowers, and it's really it's in bloom right now. It continues to bloom. It's deer. There we go. Deer tolerant, heavy fertility. It means you got say fertilize a lot, but I mean really all that you don't want to. You really have to put that much. That just kind of help keep it in bloom and healthy. Nectar source for bees. Um, you the only thing is you do need to kind of trim it up in the summer just to kind of keep it looking good and promote more blooming. Autumn Joy Sedum, well, that's one of many types of sedums. Uh, they do well in Georgia, dry, sunny location. Autumn, this is a special plant. Autumn Joy, it goes into well-behaved mounds, blue-green foliage tops with large clusters of pink flowers in August. They said few pests, almost no diseases, but and the deer don't bother it either. It's a succulent plant, so it's evolved in the desert. It's often used on what we call green roofs. I mean, this sedum and other types, usually different types, some of the smaller growing sedums on the green roofs, like at the Gwinnett Environmental Heritage Center up in Beaufort. They do need well drained soil though and full sun for optimal growth. Butterfly weed, Asclepias, milkweed. Um, it's native perennial that you can see it growing along the sides of the road in the summer, in June especially. These little patches of orange flowers. The seeds you can transplant it, uh, buy them, grow from seeds. The thing is, this is what a lot of, I mean, monarch butterflies like it, and other caterpillars do it as well. So it is a really good plant to have. Uh, Comes up later in the spring than other plants. Needs well drained soil, drought tolerant. So another nectar source, butterflies, great plant to have. Stiff verbena or rigid verbena grows easily. It grows along the sides of the road. You see this in the summer months. You drive around the road, you see this little purple lavender color flowers blooming, and cut it back twice a summer, and it'll put out put out new flowers. They attract swallowtails and other butterflies. The plant is aggressive and sends out runner and does have a tendency to be invasive. So you got to keep that in mind. Purple coneflower, echinacea, um, is another excellent one. Popular in gardens. It's also a medicinal plant. Butterfly and pollinators love it, and it does well on drought conditions. Needs to have well-drained soil, and deadheading are necessary. They definitely need to have well-drained soil. Um, there's really the deer. They said that they can handle the deer. Deadheading is essential, so you give it those things, it'll grow and thrive. So I encourage. This is one you need to get. Good plant to have. I got a couple of them. Now we've been talking about perennials and sun. We're going to talk about some shade-loving perennials. Fall spirea, a stilby, is a good one. It's difficult to grow, but it's an excellent shade garden plant if given special care. It needs water and cool roots, so uh, they need to be in shadier locations and mulch around them to keep the soil moist. Uh, put some mulch around it. And blooms may last a few weeks if conditions are right. Fertilize in March after bloom. Deadhead them when the flowers. Bloom period, it says May to June. Mulch heavily, keep moist. So those are just some things you need to have, but they are pretty if you can get some of them to grow. Coral bells, or heucheras. We sell these at our garden at our annual plant sale, which that'll be coming up. We'll send out information early next year. Um, it's one of the it has different. This is purple palette, has purple color foliage, but there's other varieties that have other colored foliage that's a very attractive. Um, it does need frequent watering and organic soils to do well, so that's why it needs to be in shadier locations. Try to keep the soils moist. They need that. So I have some growing in my yard, and they do well. They produce like pinkish white flowers, different types. So there's different. Purple Palace is one, but there are other ones, a lot of other varieties as well. Oh, here's everybody's favorite, hostas. Um, there's many different varieties out there. It would take hours to list them. Do well if given shade, water, and highly organic soils that drain well. There's You see the variegation in the foliage. They need to be divided to every 5 to 6 years. The only problem is it's deer food. The deer love them, so get some of that taste repellent on them. It might help deter them. That's the only real drawback of hostas. Bleeding hearts, dicentras. I got a couple of these as a ephemeral. Bleeding are difficult to grow unless you have well-drained, highly organic soil. Need extra water, although, none in my yard does well. A lot of these shade-loving plants, they just don't. They need to have moisture soils, but in the shade, that's easier to stay that way. Spring flowering, but in summer, kind of unusual heart-shaped flowers. Um, uh, Also, it said avoid purchasing plants with yellow mottled leaves as a symptom of a plant virus. You want to avoid those. But yeah, they're great for shade. They're really great. Lenten roses, helleborus, early flowering plants that bloom from January through March. That's where they get the name Lenten, period of Lent, February to April, some cases. Um, of different varieties, spread slowly like a ground cover by reseeding. Once the fades are bloom faded, the plant's dark green foliage persists through the rest of the season and is fairly drought resistant. So they can handle, they need organic soils that are well drained and cultural concerns reseed. That means that they can seed and spread, but I haven't really noticed this problem in mine, but it does happen. Really nice plants. Also got some perennial ground covers like creep and raspberry, rubus. That's one that's grown, uh, covers the ground, takes some shade, it takes some sun. Iberis or Candytuft uh, is uh, is a nice one that blooms in the spring. They have these evergreen plant most of the year, greeted in early spring with titanium white flowers. Tough perennial, long lived, and deer resistant. But it does need adequate drainage. If the soil isn't drained well, it will start. It will. It'll decline. Deer can tolerate it. Yeah, yeah, I see a question. Y'all type in your questions in the chat box and we'll answer them for you. Actually, Miriam can look at the chat box. All right, so yeah, this is really an interesting plant. Uh, Grows well. I have several of them planted in my garden. Thrift, which is a type of phlox. There are several different colors. They bloom early in the spring. Um, it's called just it's one of the most popular and common perennials, tolerates drought and neglect, and still blooms every March. Easy to start from cuttings, but it take a full year to produce more mature blooming specimens. Um, for it so it says heavy fertility, but I don't put any I've hardly ever fertilized mine, and they look just as nice. Mites, never seen it. I've never had issues with mites before. Never seen it, but I'm sure if you notice that, just use some of that insecticidal soap to help keep them controlled. Good drainage, they do need that. So there's the Georgia Native Plant Society and the Georgia Perennial Plant Association. Two great organizations. You might want to check them out. I mean, I'm sure they're not having meetings now with the current situation, but they will have online stuff. And where to get, sources of perennials? Well, here in Gwinnett, yeah, Home Depots and Lowe's has some, and some of them are pretty good. But you really want a better selection. Randy's Nursery down in here in Lawrenceville, Family Tree Nursery over in Snellville, Growers Outlet in Loganville have some good. The Pike Nurseries has a good selection, although it tend to be kind of a little more pricier. There's this place over there on the other side of Athens called Goodness Groves in Lexington, I think it is. Been there for decades. They really got a nice setup. So there's my contact information.